All right, so today we're diving into something pretty wild.
Oh, yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard's appointment as the Director of National Intelligence.
Go up.
Yeah, seriously, because this story,
It's a roller coaster.
it's full of twists and turns.
Yeah.
So just to quickly recap,
For anyone who might not
yeah.
completely up to speed,
So Gabbard, she was a Democratic congresswoman from Hawaii,
right, represented Hawaii.
even ran for president back in 2020.
Mm.
And then, boom, this year she switches to the Republican Party.
Pretty dramatic, right?
It's a big jump. And now she's in this position.
Hugely powerful position, too.
Yeah, handling sensitive information, making decisions.
That affects all of us, really.
It's a lot to unpack. But what really stands out to me, and maybe this is a good place for us to jump in, is her
For history, yeah.
history, with LGBTQ plus issues.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what I find so fascinating about her. She's gone from, like, staunch opposition to LGBTQ plus rights
Yeah,
to, seemingly becoming an ally.
it seems like it,
Right.
right?
And then back again.
It's
A head scratcher.
yeah, it's like a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape.
Exactly.
So let's try to put these pieces together, maybe starting back in Hawaii. I think it was 2004 when Gabbard was a state representative.
Okay, yeah, she was openly opposed to a bill for same-sex civil unions.
Right, and her language, even back then,
Pretty strong.
pretty intense, yeah.
She used the term homosexual extremists
Whoa.
to describe the opponents of her father, Mike Gabbard.
Right, who was also a big player in Hawaiian politics.
Yeah, a vocal anti-LGBTQ plus activist.
Big time. Her father actually led this organization called the Alliance for Traditional Marriage.
Oh, yeah, I remember them. They were very vocal.
Yeah, they didn't mince words.
Not at all. They called homosexuality unhealthy.
Abnormal behavior.
Yeah, and they even supported conversion therapy, which is
Which is, widely considered harmful.
totally discredited now, thank you.
Yeah, but back then their influence was real.
Oh, yeah. They actually pushed for a constitutional amendment in Hawaii, giving the legislature the power to limit marriage to opposite-sex couples.
Wow. And that amendment?
It remained in effect until this year.
Really?
Yeah. So you could see how these political moves have this lasting impact.
It's incredible. Okay, so fast forward to 2020. Gabbard's running for president.
Yeah, her past views on LGBTQ plus rights. Naturally, they became a big issue.
You can't really hide from something like that, right?
Yeah, when you're running for president.
Yeah.
So how does she handle all the scrutiny? Well, she tried to explain that her views had evolved since her, early days in Hawaii,
Okay.
cited her conservative upbringing and her time in the military.
She served alongside LGBTQ plus colleagues.
Right, and she claimed that really influenced her shift in perspective.
And she also released that apology video in 2019.
Right, apologizing for her past anti-LGBTQ plus statements. So, seemed like she was making an effort to address it.
And her voting record in Congress was pretty good, right?
It was. She consistently supported the Equality Act.
Got good ratings from the Human Rights Campaign, too.
Yeah, so it looked like,
Like a real change.
like genuine growth, a change of heart.
But, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Yo. Yeah.
After leaving Congress, it's like she reverts back.
To some of her old ways.
Yeah, to some of that earlier rhetoric.
But that puzzle we talked about, the pieces just don't quite fit, do they?
No, they don't. So in 2020, she introduced a bill.
To ban transgender girls from school sports.
Right. And then in 2022,
This one really made headlines.
she criticized Florida's Don't Say Gay law.
But not because she thought it was discriminatory.
No.
She actually thought it didn't go far enough.
She said she was shocked. It only applied up to third grade.
She wanted a complete ban.
On any discussion of sexual orientation or gender identity in schools.
Wow.
It's a big shift from those earlier, seemingly pro-LGBTQ plus stances.
Huge. And her language started to become very charged, too.
Oh, yeah. Terms like indoctrination.
Accusing teachers of pushing a woke sexual agenda.
Yeah, it's a very different tone.
And it really highlights how LGBTQ plus issues have become this battleground.
Oh, absolutely. And then came her exit from the Democratic Party.
2022.
Yeah, and her criticisms were harsh.
Cowardly wokeness, anti-white racism.
Hostility towards people of faith, she said.
She really went all in on those critiques.
And she was especially critical of Biden's approach to transgender rights.
Claimed supporting trans people erases women.
Okay.
Loaded language.
It is.
Very much so.
And then, of course, she switches to the Republican Party.
Endorses Trump.
Even helped him prep for his debate with Kamala Harris.
So it's like we have this puzzle,
Right.
and some of the pieces seem to fit, and then they don't.
It's a complicated picture. She goes from anti-LGBTQ plus activism,
To seeming like an ally.
and then,
Back again.
yeah, it's confusing.
And now she's the head of national intelligence.
It makes you wonder what's behind these shifts. Is it political strategy?
Or a real evolution of her beliefs.
Or something else entirely?
And how will this impact her decisions as DNI, especially when it comes to LGBTQ plus issues?
That's the big question, right? And I think it's one we need to explore a little deeper.
So I guess the big question on everyone's mind is like, okay, she's the director of national intelligence?
It sounds important.
Right, but what does that even mean? Like in practical terms?
Yeah, I gotta admit, I'm a little fuzzy on that whole DNI thing.
It's one of those titles, you know?
Yeah.
Sounds impressive, but...
You don't really know what they do.
Exactly. Well, it's a position with a ton of responsibility, that's for sure.
Okay.
The DNI oversees all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies.
18. There are that many.
Oh, yeah. We're talking CIA, FBI, NSA,
Bang.
the whole shebang. And their job is to coordinate all these agencies, make sure they're all on the same page, and then present a clear picture of any threats or opportunities to the president.
So they're like the president's top advisor on like all things spy stuff?
Pretty much the eyes and ears of the White House when it comes to national security.
I see. But they don't actually set policy, right?
Right. They don't directly make the decisions,
Okay.
but they have a huge influence on the information that goes into those decisions.
And that's what's a little worrying considering Gabbard's history, right?
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of folks are concerned about.
I mean, she's made some pretty controversial statements.
And those affiliations, too.
Right, like when she talks about the deep state working against the American people.
Yeah, that kind of language raises red flags for a lot of people.
Especially coming from someone in such a powerful position.
Exactly. Because it can have a chilling effect on the entire intelligence community.
What do you mean by that?
Well, imagine you're an intelligence analyst, right? You uncover something, some information, but it goes against what Gabbard believes.
Oh,
Are you going to feel comfortable bringing that forward?
if she might just dismiss it as some deep state conspiracy.
Exactly. So people might start self-censoring, holding back crucial information.
Just to avoid rocking the boat.
Yeah, and that undermines the entire intelligence community, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. I mean, how can they function properly if people are afraid to speak up?
And it erodes trust.
Trust within the intelligence community.
Yeah, but also trust from our allies.
Oh, right, because other countries rely on our intelligence too.
Absolutely. They need to be able to trust that U.S. intelligence is objective, unbiased.
Otherwise, how can we cooperate on things like, terrorism or cybersecurity?
Exactly. And all of this is happening at a time when the world is facing some serious threats.
Climate change, pandemics, authoritarianism.
The rise of new technologies, cyber warfare.
So we need a strong intelligence community more than ever.
More than ever, we need people who are willing to follow the facts wherever they lead, even if it challenges their own beliefs.
Okay, so how does all of this tie back to LGBTQ plus rights specifically?
Right.
I mean, we've talked about Gabbard's kind of back and forth history with the community.
It's complicated.
It is, but how might her views actually play out in her role as DNI?
Well, it's definitely creating a lot of anxiety, I can tell you that.
Within the LGBTQ plus community.
Absolutely. Because it's like, on one hand, you have her congressional record, which was largely pro-LGBTQ plus rights.
Right, she voted for the Equality Act.
Got good ratings from advocacy groups.
So that seems sincere.
It did. But then, on the other hand, you have her more recent rhetoric.
Which has been pretty hostile.
Yeah, talking about trans people erasing women.
Advocating for bans on LGBTQ plus inclusive education?
It's like, which is it?
It's so confusing. Is this who she really is, or is she just playing politics?
Hard to say. But the worry is that this rhetoric, regardless of what's behind it, could translate into actual actions that harm LGBTQ plus people.
I'm starting to see how even subtle shifts in focus or the language she uses
It can have a ripple effect.
could have real-world consequences.
Exactly. Let's say, hypothetically, intelligence agencies uncover something.
Okay.
Some information about a foreign government persecuting LGBTQ plus people. Given Gabbard's past statements, would she even prioritize that?
Would she bring it to the president's attention?
Or would she just dismiss it?
That's a scary thought. And it's not just about threats from other countries, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, how might her views affect how they gather intelligence about hate crimes against LGBTQ plus people here in the U.S.?
That's a huge question. And it really underscores the need for the LGBTQ plus community and their allies to stay vigilant.
To push back against any potential harm.
Absolutely.
So what can people do? I mean, it feels so overwhelming to go up against something as big as the intelligence apparatus.
It is a huge challenge, but we can't just sit back and do nothing. Staying informed is crucial.
Okay, so like reading news from different sources.
Yes, diverse sources, and be critical of what you read. Don't just accept everything at face value.
Look for misinformation propaganda.
Exactly. And support those organizations that are fighting for LGBTQ plus rights.
There's so many groups doing amazing work, right?
There are advocating for policy changes, providing legal help, raising awareness.
We have to support them.
We do. And never underestimate the power of your own voice.
What do you mean?
Contact your elected officials, go to town hall meetings, make your concerns known.
Let them know that LGBTQ plus rights matter.
They do. They are human rights.
Yeah.
Let them know you expect those rights to be protected.
This is all a lot to take in.
It is.
This whole situation with Gabbard's appointment, it just raises so many questions.
So many concerns, especially for the LGBTQ plus community.
And it seems like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, this is a situation that needs to be watched very carefully.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
Well, let's try to think about what might happen next.
Hmm.
What are some possible scenarios? And what concrete steps can we take to make a difference? Maybe that's something we can dig into next.
Okay, so we've talked about the concerns, but is there a chance that maybe she just, puts all that aside?
You mean her personal views?
Yeah, like maybe she sees this D&I role as strictly professional.
Compartmentalizes everything.
Yeah, exactly. Just focuses on the intelligence that's presented to her.
It's possible, I suppose.
Yeah.
She could approach it like a judge, weighing the evidence objectively.
Okay, so she puts national security above everything else.
But, it's hard to ignore the fact that she has expressed some very strong opinions.
Publicly.
Publicly, yeah. And those opinions, sometimes they align a little too closely with some...
With some narratives that are already out there,
Yeah.
like take her stance on Ukraine, for example.
Oh, right.
She's argued that Russia's invasion could have been avoided if the U.S. had just,
Acknowledge Russia's security concerns?
Yeah, that's basically parroting Russian propaganda, isn't it?
Well, a lot of experts have said that, yes.
And it's been widely disputed.
Mhm.
So it makes you wonder, how will that influence her interpretation of intelligence related to Russia?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It seems like there are a couple ways this could go. She could either downplay information that goes against her worldview.
Like evidence of Russian war crimes, for instance.
Exactly. Or, and maybe this is even more concerning, she could overemphasize certain threats, if they fit into her existing beliefs.
Oh, absolutely. Let's say intelligence suggests that a group advocating for LGBTQ plus rights in another country
Okay.
is actually a front for a hostile government.
It could happen.
It could. But with Gabbard's past statements about woke agendas and all that,
Right.
there's a worry she might jump to conclusions.
Without really scrutinizing the evidence.
And that could lead to some bad policy decisions.
Which could then harm LGBTQ plus people in that country.
It's a real concern.
It seems like this potential for bias is a huge issue, whether it's conscious or not.
It is. It's always a challenge in intelligence work, trying to stay objective.
Right.
But in this case, with Gabbard's history and the political climate being what it is, it's even more worrying.
So what can we do? Are there any safeguards in place to make sure intelligence analysis is objective?
Well, one important factor is having a diverse group of analysts.
Different backgrounds, different perspectives.
Exactly. So you don't have everyone thinking the same way.
No echo chamber.
Right. You need people who are willing to challenge assumptions, consider alternative interpretations.
And to speak up, even if it means disagreeing with their superiors.
Exactly. You need that culture of dissent.
But what if Gabbard tries to get rid of anyone who doesn't agree with her?
That's a possibility, unfortunately.
So the intelligence community becomes less diverse, more ideologically aligned.
That's the worry. And that's where watchdog groups and congressional oversight committees come in.
To keep an eye on things.
To make sure the intelligence community isn't being politicized.
If that happens, it feels like it could be a real crisis for our democracy.
I mean, if we can't trust our own intelligence agencies, how can we make good decisions about national security?
Or foreign policy.
Exactly. It affects everything.
So what can we do as citizens? I mean, it feels pretty impossible to go up against something like the intelligence apparatus.
It's true. We don't have direct control. But we can support organizations that are fighting for transparency and accountability.
Like the ACLU, the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
The Brennan Center.
Okay, so we can donate to those groups, volunteer, spread their message.
Those are all good steps. And just staying informed, talking about these issues with friends and family.
So it's not just about donating money, it's also about raising awareness.
Exactly. Because it's easy to feel powerless when you're up against something this big.
It is.
But our actions do matter. Speaking out, holding our leaders accountable, supporting these organizations, it all makes a difference.
So, to wrap things up, it seems like Gabbard's appointment has brought up a lot of important questions.
About her history, about the potential for bias and intelligence.
And about the role of citizens in protecting our democracy.
It's been quite a deep dive, hasn't it?
It has. But hopefully it's given our listeners some things to think about.
And some ways to get involved.
Exactly. We all have a part to play in shaping the future we want.
A future where our intelligence agencies are driven by facts.
Where everyone's rights are respected and protected.
Thanks for joining us.
And we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that matters.